A while ago, I made a video discussing multiple moons in fantasy systems, and one of the questions I was asked after that video was, what about multiple suns? It's taken me a while to get my head around the impact of multiple suns. But the time has come for me to share my thoughts with you. So today, we'll talk about the effects of multiple suns on the planets in terms of climate, tides, gravity, and the development of life. We'll also dive into the difference between P-type and S-type orbits, and if this world is a fantasy world, we'll talk about magic. Welcome to another episode of Just in Time Worlds with your host, Marie Mullaney. First, let's talk about what binary star systems actually are. They are solar systems with two suns. In these systems, the two stars orbit around a common center of mass, creating unique effects on the planets within the system. Binary stars are not as rare as you might think. Around half of all star systems in our galaxy are believed to be binary or multiple star systems. But the important thing to bear in mind is that there are two types of orbits that matter here for planets in binary star systems: P-type and S-type. P-type orbits are known as circumbinary, and S-type are called circumstellar. So let's really delve into the difference of these two orbits, because they really are critical to understanding multiple suns. First, let's talk about P-types. In a P-type orbit, a circumbinary orbit, the planet orbits both stars in a wide circumbinary path. This means that the planet experiences two suns in its sky, leading to unique environmental and climatic effects. The two stars are relatively close together, and the planet orbits around their common center of mass. The gravitational interaction between the two stars can create a more stable environment, as the star's gravitational pull effectively cancels each other out, allowing for a more circular orbit for the planet. However, a P-type orbit can also lead to more extreme seasons, as the planet may experience periods of intense heat when both stars are on the same side of the sky, and periods of prolonged darkness when the stars are on the opposite sides. These extreme conditions can lead to the development of very hardy and adaptable life forms, as well as some pretty fascinating creatures and societies that we will talk about. Okay, so what is S-type or circumstellar? In S-type orbits, the planet orbits around only one of the two stars in the binary system, while the second star orbits at a much greater distance. So this leads to a more Earth-like environment with one dominant sun and a secondary, much dimmer sun visible in the sky. The effects of the secondary star are less pronounced in S-type orbits, but they can still have a significant impact on the planet's climate and tides and the development of life, as we'll talk about. So let's talk about climate and tides first. In an S-type orbit, the primary star determines the planet's overall climate, while the secondary star causes variations in temperatures and weather patterns. During periods when both stars are visible in the sky, the planet may experience increased temperatures and much more intense solar radiation. Conversely, when the secondary star is on the opposite side of the primary star, the planet may experience slightly cooler temperatures. Tidal forces on a planet in an S-type orbit can also be influenced by the secondary star. Although the primary star will have the greatest effect on the planet's tides, the secondary star can still exert its gravitational pull, leading to more complex tidal patterns and potentially stronger tides during certain periods. And for more on the impact of celestial bodies on tides, do check out my video on multiple moons in the information card. Life on an S-type planet could be pretty similar to life on Earth, as the environment is generally more stable and the temperature variations much less extreme. However, the presence of a secondary star can still lead to unique adaptations in the planet's flora and fauna. For example, plants may develop specialized light harvesting mechanisms to take advantage of the increased solar radiation during the periods of dual sunlight, and they might store the energy thus harvested, hoarding it for when there is much less light due to the second sun being invisible. Societies in an S-type orbiting world may develop unique cultural practices and beliefs centered around the secondary star. The star could be viewed as a symbol of change, balance, or duality, and play a central role in the world's mythology and religion. Festivals and celebrations may coincide with times when both stars are visible in the sky, or when the secondary star is eclipsed by the primary. The secondary star could also inspire technological advancements as societies strive to understand and harness the unique energy output of their dual star system. This could lead to the early development of solar energy technologies, especially as you have so much light available to you every time the secondary sun is in the sky. And with the inspiration of a plant that has adapted to harvesting that secondary sun, you may very well end up with a rapid development of solar energy technology. So if you enjoyed that discussion of the different types of orbit, hit the thumbs up button, and let's talk about the effects of gravity and tides on life in a binary star system. Gravity plays a crucial role in shaping the environment of planets within binary star systems. The gravitational forces exerted by the two stars can lead to complex orbital patterns, which in turn can impact the habitability of the planets in the system. The combined gravitational forces of the two stars can also affect the planet's internal structure, potentially leading to a different distribution of resources and geological activity from what we're used to. As I spoke about during my Metals in Fantasy Worlds video, which you can check out in the information card, bear in mind that those gravitational forces that shape your planet's formation, they also determine which metals will be captured into your planet and will hence be available to your people. So if you want to have like an explosion of really rare metals and all kinds of weirdness in your metallic composition and really heavy metals and so on, it might be an idea to set your world in a binary system where those gravitational forces of your two stars acting on your world can bond those super heavy or magical elements into your world and allow for them to be mined. But you should bear in mind that in binary star systems, the gravitational forces of both stars will affect the stability of your planet's orbits, and a stable orbit is essential for long-term habitability and probably the formation of life. Unstable orbit result in erratic changes in temperature and other environmental factors, which the dinosaurs will tell you is not so healthy for your life's longevity. Of course, they will affect the tides. Tidal forces in a binary star system can be significantly different from those in a single star system due to the combined gravitational pull of both stars. These forces can lead to unique tidal patterns, which can have pretty profound effects on the development of life in ecosystems. I'm not going to go into too much details on tides and their potential usages here, because everything that I said in my 2 moons videos applies pretty much exactly to 2 suns. You're going to have the suns affecting the bulge size. When they're aligned, they'll make the bulge bigger. When they're at angles, they'll make the bulge smaller. And as the planet rotates inside the bulge, it's going to experience huge tides or small tides, with all of the societal impacts thereof. However, you should bear in mind that tides do play a vital role in shaping marine ecosystems, which is probably where your life starts, because it impacts the distribution of nutrients and temperatures. In binary star systems, these complex tidal patterns can lead to an extremely diverse marine habitat and ecosystem. So if you want to build an undersea civilization, you might do well to set it in a binary star system where life could evolve in the super rich ocean. And speaking of life, let's talk a little bit about the evolutionary process, in theory, obviously, on a binary system. So life could adapt to these weird gravitational and tidal forces. These adaptations could include changes to the reproductive strategy, the morphology, and physiology to cope with this dynamic environment. Now, I did make a video on fauna and flora in fantasy worlds, which you can check out in the information card, but just for fun, I made a couple of creatures that I thought might do really well in a binary system. So the creatures that I thought of that could work in this kind of system is something like the luminous looper, the luminous loper, a quadrupedal herbivore that thrives in the regions of the planet with rapidly changing light levels. This creature has a unique bioluminescent fur that changes color depending on the intensity of the light it receives from binary stars. The luminous looper primarily feeds on the glowleaf plant, which has adapted to the fluctuating light levels by developing a photosynthetic process that stores energy in its leaves during periods of high light intensity. The loper's bioluminescent fur allows it to blend into the glowleaf fields, avoiding predators. The sky drifter, and yes, my naming really sucked. I was in a rush. The sky drifter is a large floating jellyfish-like creature that lives in the planet's upper atmosphere. It uses the strong winds caused by the binary star's tidal forces to stay aloft. The sky drifter feeds on airborne spores released by the wind tree, a tall plant with massive sail-like leaves that catches the wind to spread its spores. The sky drifter filters the spores from the air, absorbing nutrients and moisture in the process. The sky drifter would also make a great candidate for whale falls. So if a sky drifter dies and it falls to the planet of the surface, it could result in the same kind of effects as we see in our world when a whale dies in the open ocean, where everything descends on the whale to come and feast on its carcass. And for my full thoughts on whale falls in fantasy worlds, check out the information cards. Hey, I've made a lot of videos. Anyway, so those were some thoughts that came to me around what kind of creatures could exist in such a binary world system where you have different kinds of light available to you. So if you enjoyed that discussion of life and evolution in a binary system, hit the thumbs up button. And now, let's talk about the seasons. So the impact of a binary star system on the seasons of a planet can be quite different depending on whether the planet is in an S-type or a P-type orbit. In S-type orbits, the planet orbits one star while the other star orbits at a greater difference. This configuration can lead to complex seasonal patterns due to the gravitational influences of both stars. The primary factor in determining the seasons in this case is the axial tilt of the planet, just like in our own solar system. However, the presence of the second star can introduce additional complexities to the seasonal patterns. Depending on the distance and brightness of the second star, it could contribute varying amounts of light and warmth to the planet, possibly causing fluctuations in the temperature and daylight throughout the year. Additionally, if the planet's orbit around the primary star is highly elliptical, it may experience more extreme seasonal variations as it moves closer and further from the primary star. The secondary star's gravitational influence can also contribute to changes in the planet's axial tilt, and that leads to long-term climate variations. In a P-type orbit, the planet orbits both stars simultaneously as they orbit each other. The interaction between the stars and the planet can create unique seasonal patterns. The primary factor in determining the seasons is still the planet's axial tilt, but the stars' positions in relation to each other can also influence the intensity and duration of the seasons. During the period when both stars are close together in the sky, as seen from the planet, the combined light and warmth of the two stars could result in a more intense summer season. Conversely, when the stars are on opposite side of the sky, the planet may experience a milder summer or a much more pronounced winter season depending on the axial tilt and the distance from the stars. The combined gravitational pull of the two stars can also affect the planet's orbit and axial tilt over time, leading to variation in the intensity and duration of the season. If the stars in the binary system have different spectral types, i.e. one is hotter and more luminous than the other, the planet's climate and seasonal patterns could also be influenced by the changing positions of the stars in their mutual orbit. There is one other really interesting thought that I had while I was making this video, and that is, what if, in an S-type orbit, the primary star is a dwarf star, and the secondary is a far brighter and warmer? And the effect that this would have on your climate, I think, is quite fascinating. So, I think it could have a couple of effects. It could have an uneven seasonal effect. So basically, the secondary star's brightness and warmth would still have a vast impact on the climate of the planet. Now, depending on the orbital configuration and the distance between the stars, the secondary star could contribute additional heat and light during specific portions of the year, creating a very uneven seasonal effect. For example, a planet may experience a milder winter or an extended summer season when the secondary star is closest to the planet in orbit. You could also have very complex climate zones. The variation in heat and light from both stars would create complex climate zones on the planet. The intensity and distribution of sunlight could lead to a range of temperature gradients, which could result in diverse biomes and ecosystems. These unique climate zones could foster the development of these strange flora and fauna, as well as distinct cultural adaptations for sentient beings who are like, yes, but that star, though it is distant, is our true God because it brings warmth and light. And the last interesting thought that I had around this dwarf star primary star configuration was variable daylight duration. So as the planets orbit its primary dwarf star, the secondary star's position in the sky will change throughout the year. And depending on the relative position of the two stars, the planet may experience periods of extended daylight or even continuous daylight, as the light from the secondary star supplements or extends the primary star's daylight. Conversely, there may be periods with shorter days or even continuous twilight, depending on the alignment of the stars, when your secondary star is just nowhere to be seen. You should also be aware that if you have eccentric orbit effects, you could have very weird effects. So if the planet's orbit around the primary star is highly eccentric, the distance between the planet and the secondary star could vary significantly throughout the year. And this would further intensify the variations in seasonal effect and climate. Periods of extreme heat or cold could occur as the planet moves closer to or further away from the secondary star, leading to even more pronounced variations in the climate and the environment. When creating a fantasy or science fiction world within a binary star system, you have to think about the effect that it's going to have on your climate and on your tides in order to create a realistic and engaging environment. So if you enjoyed that discussion of climate and the seasons, hit the thumbs up button, and let's take a deeper, longer look at light in a binary star system. So light really does have a fundamental effect on life, and it would change in this binary star setup. In your P-type orbit, where the planet orbits both stars, the light conditions can be quite unique. Since the planet is orbiting around the two stars, the amount of light it receives will vary depending on the distance from the stars and their individual luminosity. At certain points in the orbit, both stars may be visible in the sky, resulting in near constant daylight. At other times, one star may eclipse the other, leading to a period of dimmer light or even darkness. This variability in the light could have profound effects both on your society and on life evolving on this world, especially its circadian rhythm. Sentient beings evolving on this life and inhabiting a world with a P-type orbits might develop flexible or irregular sleep patterns, adapting to the changing light conditions by being able to store up sleep, the way we're supposed to but really can't. Some species could evolve to be even more active during the periods of continuous daylight and go into a state of hibernation during the dimmer periods. This could lead to a wide range of unique adaptations among sentient beings and other life forms. This could lead to adaptations like storing sleep. It could lead to sight adaptations, being able to see in the dark if you're active in it. It could lead to adaptations of being able to store energy inside yourself that you generate from the sun, like everybody's Superman. So those kinds of adaptations are definitely worth thinking about, like how would people's sleep patterns change in this vastly different light situation? But that's in P-type orbits. In S-type orbits, where the planet orbits just one star while the other star orbits at a distance, this would probably result in the more familiar day-night cycle. The amount of light received by the planet would primarily be determined by the star it orbits, similar to our world. The distant companion star could still have an effect on the overall light conditions. The companion star could appear as a bright point of light in the sky, or even as a second smaller sun if it's particularly bright. This could lead to periods of increased daylight or double sunsets when both stars are visible in the sky, as well as periods of twilight or dimmer light when the companion star is visible, but the primary star is not. So you would have more regular day-night patterns, but you could still see changes in circadian rhythms. Sentient life might evolve rest cycles that account for the varying light conditions caused by the companion star. So maybe you could have extended periods of wakefulness or sleep, or maybe you could have life that's adapted to working even in that twilight period. So if you enjoyed that discussion of light, hit the thumbs up button. And let's talk about magic that could really fit into this world. Because this, after all, is fantasy world building. So there's a couple of magic types that I think really fit a world like this. One is celestial magic. So this is where you have magic that is closely tied to the position, movements, and interactions of the two stars. You could have spells and rituals that become more potent or have different effects depending on the time of day or the alignment of the two binary stars. The celestial magic system would require practitioners to be very well versed in astronomy and understand the precise cycles of the two stars in order to judge when their rituals are ready to cast. You could also have a dualistic magic system, where the binary star system could give rise to a magic system that revolves around the concept of duality. Each star could represent opposing forces or elements. So one star could be associated with fire, warmth, and light, while the other could represent water, cold, and darkness. Magic users might have to draw on the power of both stars to maintain balance, or they could specialize in harnessing one of the stars, and it could be a kind of elemental magic system where you have access to different elements depending on the star you're associated with. You could also look at something like star-bonded magic, where individuals could form a bond with one of the stars, granting them unique magical abilities. So it could tie into that elemental duality concept. So in this system, you could have the bond, the strength of it be determined by when the individual is born, which sun was in the star. And so the stars almost become like a totemic force to people who were born when they were ascended, and that gives them certain abilities and powers. Then, of course, tidal magic would absolutely work in this. So, given the significant impact of binary star systems on the tides, it absolutely makes sense to have a magic system that draws power from the tides, from gravity, much the same way as multiple moons gives you this kind of magic very naturally. It is worth exploring in a multiple sun world as well. And don't forget about the obvious one. There is unique light patterns being created by your binary stars, which means there's unique shadow patterns, which means a magic system leveraging light and shadow could very easily fit into this kind of world, including things like illusion magic or shadow travel, or all of those kinds of abilities associated with light and shadows could play very well in this world. And then depending on which star is ascended and how they are in relationship to each other, you could alter the strength of which one is more powerful, the light or the shadow. And then I mentioned everybody's Superman. Well, you could really leverage that. I mean, Superman gets his energy from our sun. Double the sun, double the power. So if you had a magic system where people drew their energy from the stellar energy of the suns, a binary system would give them an enormous advantage. No matter which magic system you select for your world, if you have a binary star system, I recommend you lean into that essential light, tides, gravity thing. It will make your world feel much more integrated. So if you enjoyed that magic discussion, hit the thumbs up button, and let's look at some examples of multiple sun systems in science fiction and science fantasy. The most obvious one, of course, is Tatooine from Star Wars. This is one of the most famous examples of a binary star system. Tatooine is, of course, the desert home planet of Luke Skywalker, and it orbits the twin suns, innovatively named Tatoo 1 and Tatoo 2. The binary star system contributes to the planet's climate and harsh environment, shaping the way of life for its inhabitants, including the moisture farmers like Luke, who collect water from the atmosphere. There are also diverse alien species that reside here with their water management strategies. Another example, in the same kind of vein, is Arrakis from Dune. So this is, of course, from the mind of Frank Herbert, and Arrakis is located in the binary star system of Canopus. The two suns contribute to the planet's dry and inhospitable environment. There's a trend there, which becomes the center of the struggle for control in the whole Dune saga, because there's also this unique life form, the worms, that create the spice or melange. The binary star system's influence on the planet's climate and ecology plays a pretty key role in the story of Dune, and the political intrigue that results. Then there's a less well-known example, Heliconia from the Heliconia trilogy. This is from the pen of Brian Aldiss. Heliconia orbits a primary star and a more distant secondary star. The unique orbital mechanics of this system results in extreme seasons that last for centuries, kind of like Game of Thrones, but with good reasons. And this profoundly affects the planet's climate, the flora, and the fauna. The civilizations of Heliconia are shaped by these long seasonal cycles, and the inhabitants adapt their cultures, their technology, and their lifestyles to survive this dramatic shifts in weather and environmental conditions. So I really recommend this if you're looking into binary systems, because he did a great job that didn't just result in, oh, desert planet. Another great example is the Nightfall series by Isaac Asimov and Robert Silverberg. The Nightfall series is set on the planet Kalgash, which is part of a complex system of six suns. The unique configuration of these suns results in a world where darkness is extremely rare, occurring only once every 2,049 years. The impact of this binary and multi-star system on the world is profound, with a rare event of nightfall leading to chaos and social collapse as the inhabitants are completely unprepared for the darkness and the psychological effects it has on them. So if you take a look at these examples, yes, you could go desert planet, but there are so many more interesting things that you can do with a binary system. I would suggest really lean into that climate effect and the light effect and the variation and the variability. So if you enjoyed that discussion of the various systems that have binary, hit the thumbs up button. And let's talk about what I think you should consider if you are building a world in a binary system. Your most important question, in my opinion, is your orbital mechanics. Is it a P-type orbit? Is it an S-type orbit? This will change your climate. It will change the availability of light. It will have a profound impact on the life that evolves on this world. So think about the difference between P-type and S-type and what that offers you as a world and what you want out of your binary system. Much like with multiple moons, do not forget about the importance of tidal forces. Tidal forces are going to make a big difference in life, in magic, in the people that evolve here, and the sentient life and how they live. Remember that the light is going to change. Even in a more normal orbit, the light is still going to change. It is going to be different. Think about how your life deals with that variation in light. If you have long nights, what do people sleep more? If you have long days, do they stock up sleep and somehow expend it later? So give some consideration to the effects of light. As somebody who lives in the Arctic Circle, let me tell you that the variation in life makes a humongous difference to your ability to function as a person. And that's having evolved on a planet with a normal orbital cycle. And don't just make a binary system and go for desert world and move on. Like, lean into the changes it'll make in your society. Like, if you're just going to have a desert type world or whatever, just make a normal sun, But if you're going to use a binary system, really use a binary system. Think about your religious belief. Do people worship both suns? Do they worship one of the sun? Is it a dual kind of God situation? Think about how magic is going to be impacted. Think about your technology. Are people going to leverage the second sun's energy? How is all of that going to interact with each other? Lean into your binary system and you will make a unique, fantastic world that very few people explore. Those are my thoughts on multiple suns in a fantasy or sci-fi setting, and man, was this a long video. Congrats on making it to the end. If you want to support the channel, there's a super thanks button, a join button, or links to my books down below, and you will get these cool perks if you join the channel. If you enjoyed this video, maybe check out my video on fauna and flora and creating it in fantasy worlds, and I will see you soon for another episode of Just in Time Worlds.